It was the day of my daughter's wedding, and there I was, standing in the lavish entryway of my son-in-law's house, feeling every inch of my age and wear. The marble floor gleamed under the harsh lights, and the scent of expensive perfume mixed with the sterile coldness of wealth. I was still trying to get used to the extravagant world my daughter, Emily, had married into. I'd arrived early, holding a simple wrapped box, grandfather's pocket watch, passed down through generations. "Dad, you made it!" Emily's voice pulled me out of my thoughts as she appeared in the hallway, looking radiant in a simple dress. She kissed my cheek, but there was an edge of tension in her smile. Her eyes flickered toward the box I was holding. "What's that?" I smiled softly. "Grandfather's watch. Thought you might want it for the wedding." Before Emily could respond, Alex, her fiancé, emerged from the living room, a glass of wine in hand, his gaze cool as it scanned over me. "James," he greeted me stiffly, offering a brief handshake. His attention then shifted to the box in my hands, as if it were an afterthought. "What's in the box?" "Grandfather's watch," I said again, a little more firmly this time. Emily bounced on her toes with excitement. "Dad, can I see it?" I unwrapped the box carefully and held out the gold pocket watch, worn and polished by time. Emily's eyes lit up, but Alex merely glanced at it dismissively, his voice flat. "Vintage. Might be worth something to a collector." I felt a sting at his words, but didn't say anything. This wasn't about money, it was about history, family. Before I could voice any of these thoughts, Emily's Aunt Caroline called from the dining room. "Dinner's ready!" We made our way to the table, a place set for more than just a family meal. It was a stage for Alex's wealth. Crystal glasses, fine china, and a glittering chandelier that hung like a crown above us. I took my seat, and though I had worked tirelessly to provide a good life for my daughter, I felt the weight of every inch of this house's extravagance pressing in. It didn't belong to me, and neither did the company. "So, how's the wedding planning going?" I asked, trying to break the silence. "How many guests are you expecting?" Alex, who had taken a seat at the head of the table, cut into his steak with precision. "We're keeping it small. Close friends, some colleagues," he replied without looking up. "Professional contacts," Emily added, her voice carrying a note of something more, but I didn't know if it was pride or discomfort. "Of course," Alex echoed, but there was something in his tone, something dismissive. He was already setting the tone for the evening. The conversation carried on, wedding venues, catering, flower arrangements, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong here, among the polished perfection of their world. After a few minutes, Alex set down his fork and cleared his throat. "James, I think we need to have a conversation about something." Emily's fork hovered in the air, and I could see the slight shift in her expression, the same tension I'd been feeling. "What about it?" I asked, my heart sinking slightly. Alex leaned back in his chair, putting on that confident, businesslike demeanor I had come to dislike. "It's about the wedding. I've been thinking about the guest list, the atmosphere we want to create. You see, I've invited a lot of influential people, tech executives, venture capitalists, city officials." I felt the tightness in my chest. "What about it?" "Well," Alex continued, his voice taking on a colder, more calculated tone, "this isn't just a wedding. It's an opportunity to network, to make connections. And I've been thinking it might be best if you didn't attend." The words hit like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt myself going cold. Alex didn't hesitate. "Your presence would be a problem. You see, you're a waiter. My guests are important people, and I don't think your presence fits in with the kind of atmosphere we're trying to create. It could be a distraction." He spoke as though it were simple logic, something that made perfect sense. The room fell silent, and I could feel my blood rushing in my ears. Emily was saying something, but I couldn't focus on her words. I could only hear the thud of my own heartbeat as it echoed in my chest. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice sharp and defensive. "That's my father you're talking about, Alex." "I know," he replied smoothly, his gaze unwavering. "And I respect that, Emily. But this wedding is about our future. I can't risk it because of sentimentality. I opened my mouth, but the words were stuck. He continued, You're a waiter. My guests create jobs, fund startups, influence policy. I need to surround myself with people who matter. Do you really think you belong in that conversation? The words stung like a slap. A man who had worked double shifts to put my daughter through college, to give her a future she deserved, was now being told I didn't matter. The room felt smaller, my chest tightening, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately, Alex said, his voice taking on that air of authority that made my stomach twist. He stood up, signaling the end of the discussion. James, would you come with me to the terrace? We stepped out onto the terrace, and I felt the cool evening air hit my face like a reminder that I didn't belong here, not really. The view from here was stunning, green lawns that stretched out like a picture-perfect postcard, with the city's skyline in the distance. The soft glow of streetlights below cast a serene, almost dreamlike quality to the whole scene. It was beautiful, I had to admit. But everything about this house, everything about Alex, made me feel like I was standing in a world that wasn't mine. A world I could never truly fit into. Alex leaned against the railing with a casual ease, as if he belonged to this life. Beautiful, isn't it? He said, gesturing to the view. This house cost me $3.5 million. The wedding alone is running close to $250,000. The catering's $100,000. I've spared no expense. I stood a little further back, clutching the box that held my father's watch. My father's watch, the one that had been passed down through generations, worn by men who worked with their hands and built their lives from the ground up. It felt heavier now than ever before. $250,000? I echoed. For a wedding? Alex gave a sharp nod, his voice almost clinical as he continued. Flowers, $20,000. The photographer, $10,000. Sophia's dress, $15,000. The whole thing is an investment. This wedding is about positioning, James. It's not just about celebrating a personal moment. It's about securing a future. I swallowed, feeling the gap between us widen, a canyon that I couldn't cross. I understand, Alex, I said, though I didn't. How could I? To me, a wedding was about family, love, commitment, not numbers, not investments. Not about securing future business partnerships. But I paid for Sophia's education. I worked double shifts to make sure she had everything she needed. I paid for her car, her apartment, her books. It wasn't always easy, but I did it because she's my daughter. And I wanted to give her a future. Alex turned to me then, his face set in a mask of calm that barely concealed his disdain. And I'm doing that now, James. This wedding is a moment for us to grow, for our future. My guests, they matter. You serve food for a living. You'll never be part of that world. His words hit me hard. My throat tightened, but I didn't let the anger rise. This wasn't about anger. This was about a daughter who had chosen a man who couldn't see past his own ego. It was about a man who had no respect for where I came from, for the life I'd built for Emily. You're right, I said slowly, feeling the weight of my words settle like a stone in my chest. I'm just a waiter. But I'm also a father. And I will be there tomorrow, no matter what you say. Alex took a deep breath, a smug look crossing his face as he stepped closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. I can't let you embarrass me, James. My guests don't need to see you there. They don't need to know where you've come from, or what you've done. They'll only remember the man who serves them their drinks. I can't have that at my wedding. I stood still, the box in my hands feeling heavier with every word. You don't have to worry about me, I said quietly. You've already made your decision. Alex took a step back, clearly satisfied. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. His eyes flicked toward the door, where Emily was still standing, watching us from the dining room, her face full of confusion. I'll let you say goodbye to her, he said, the tone of his voice like a dismissal. But don't think about showing up tomorrow. It'll only cause problems. With that, he turned and walked back inside, leaving me standing alone on the terrace. The night air, cold and unfeeling, seemed to close in around me. I stared at the city lights below, feeling a sense of resignation creep into my bones. I wasn't just a waiter. I wasn't just someone who served food for a living. But I had no choice but to let him believe that. When I walked back into the house, I passed Emily's Aunt Caroline, who gave me a worried look but said nothing. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on me. Emily was waiting for me by the door, a frown on her face. I could see she knew something was wrong. "Dad," she began, but I stopped her before she could say anything more. "Emily," I said softly, "don't worry about me. I'll be okay. You just focus on tomorrow. This is your day." She looked at me, her eyes full of concern, but she didn't argue. "I'm so sorry about all of this," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not fair what Alex said." "It's okay," I said again, this time with more certainty. "I'm your father. I love you. Nothing changes that." I kissed her forehead and turned toward the door, feeling the cold air wrap around me as I stepped back into the night. The car ride back to my apartment felt long, though it wasn't far at all. My mind was full of the conversation I just had, of the man who had claimed to love my daughter but couldn't see past the world of privilege he inhabited. He thought he could control everything, every person, every event, every moment. But he'd made a mistake. Tomorrow, I would be at that wedding, no matter how invisible I had to become. The drive home from Emily's wedding venue was filled with a restless quiet that pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation on the terrace, about the way Alex had dismissed me as if I were nothing but a servant. The city lights blurred by my windshield seemed like distant stars, too far away for me to touch, too unreachable. I had always been proud of the life I built for my daughter. Every sacrifice I made was for her future, for her happiness. Yet here I was, told that I was unworthy to witness one of the most important days of her life. It was late when I finally got home. My small apartment greeted me with silence, the kind of quiet that had become familiar over the years. There was no marble floor, no crystal chandeliers, no guests in tailored suits. Just me, my thoughts, and the worn-out furniture that I'd accumulated over the years. The stillness felt like a weight pressing down on me, and for a moment, I let myself sink into it. But then I remembered why I had come back. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I went to the small kitchen and grabbed the phone off the counter. My fingers hovered over the screen as I considered what to do next. Tomorrow was the day. The wedding was going to happen whether I was there or not, but I wasn't going to let Alex's words be the final judgment on who I was. I wasn't just a waiter. I wasn't just a man who served drinks. I was her father, and I had every right to be there. I called Antonio. "James, what's going on?" Antonio's voice was thick with sleep, but I knew he'd pick up. He always did when it mattered. "I need a favor," I said, my voice steady but urgent. "Tomorrow's the day. I'm not going to let Alex keep me out of my daughter's wedding." Antonio didn't say anything right away. There was a long pause before he spoke again. "You want me to help you get in?" "I need to be there. I've worked at Bella Vista for over 15 years. I know how to blend in. I know how to disappear. I just need you to make sure I'm on the staff for tomorrow." Antonio sighed deeply, and I could hear him sit up, the creak of the chair beneath him. "This isn't right, James. A father should be sitting in the front row. Not serving food. Not in the background." "I don't have any other choice, Antonio," I said, my voice firm now. "Alex has made it clear that I'm not welcome there as family. But I will be there. Even if it means working the event. I need to see Emily marry. I need to be there for her, even if he doesn't think I belong." There was another long pause. Antonio's silence was enough to tell me that he was weighing my words. But then he spoke again, quieter now. "All right, James. I'll call Joseph. He owes me a favor, and I know he can get you in as part of the staff. But once you're there, you're not going to be just a waiter. You'll have to blend in. Don't make waves. I don't want you getting into trouble with Alex or anyone else. I'll keep my head down, I said, though I didn't quite know what that would mean yet. I just need to be there for my daughter. All right. I'll make it happen. But you owe me, James. I won't forget this, I said quietly. Thanks. I hung up the phone, feeling the weight of what I had just decided. Tomorrow, I would be at that wedding. Not as an outsider, not as someone relegated to the background, but as Emily's father. And I would do whatever it took to make sure I was there for her. I couldn't let Alex think he had won. The man who believed that wealth and status defined everything was about to learn that it wasn't money or connections that mattered. It was love, family, loyalty. And I would prove it, no matter how small I had to make myself in the process. The morning of the wedding came too soon. I hardly slept, my mind racing with thoughts of how I'd navigate the day. I pulled myself out of bed early, the heavy silence of my apartment pressing in on me. There was a quiet anticipation in the air, mixed with a tinge of uncertainty. It was going to be a day full of contradictions. I was going to witness my daughter's wedding, but I wasn't supposed to be there. I dressed in my work uniform, the black pants, the crisp white shirt, and the black vest that had been my daily attire for years. It wasn't much, but it was what I knew. My hands trembled slightly as I buttoned up the shirt, the familiarity of the uniform grounding me even as my heart ached with the weight of the situation. I wasn't just a waiter. I wasn't just a man who served drinks. I was Emily's father, and that mattered more than anything Alex could say or do. When I arrived at Bella Vista, the place seemed different. The elegant structure, with its large windows and high ceilings, always looked impressive, but today, it seemed more like a stage that I had to blend into, despite everything inside me wanting to be seen as something more than just another invisible figure among the staff. I walked in through the kitchen entrance, the familiar bustle of the staff preparing for the event. Antonio was already there, overseeing everything. His face lit up when he saw me, though his expression was still marked with concern. "You made it," he said with a small, knowing smile. "You ready for this?" I nodded, though my throat felt tight. "I don't have much of a choice, do I?" Antonio clapped me on the back. "You'll get through it. Just remember, you're not doing this for him. You're doing it for Emily." "Right," I replied, the words ringing hollow in my chest. But he was right. This wasn't about Alex. It was about Emily, and I would do whatever it took to be there for her. I walked into the main dining room where the wedding reception would take place. The space was being prepared with meticulous precision. The round tables were set up with white cloths, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandeliers above. The flower arrangements were perfection, their fragrance filling the air. The sight of it all made my chest tighten. So much beauty, so much wealth. I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in a world that wasn't mine. But this was my daughter's world now, and I had to find a way to belong in it, even if only for a day. As the guests began arriving, I moved through the room with practiced ease, refilling drinks and ensuring everything was in place. The guests, dressed in expensive suits and gowns, barely noticed me. To them, I was just another servant, another invisible figure in the background. I told myself that it didn't matter. It didn't matter what they thought of me. What mattered was that I was here. I was here for Emily. I saw Sophia for the first time as she entered the room with Alex. She was radiant, glowing in her wedding dress. The sight of her took my breath away. She had always been my little girl, but now, she was a woman, beautiful, confident, and on the brink of a new life. I watched from the corner of the room as she greeted her guests, her smile bright and full of excitement. Alex was by her side, looking every bit the part of the successful businessman he believed himself to be. His eyes flicked over me briefly, but there was no recognition, no acknowledgement. To him, I was invisible, a background character in the show he had worked so hard to stage. I moved quietly through the room, pretending to focus on my duties, but all the while, my eyes were on Emily. She was so close, yet so far away. It hurt, knowing that I couldn't be a part of her special day in the way I had imagined. As the evening wore on, I continued to serve, moving among the guests, offering champagne, clearing plates, always keeping a low profile. I had learned to be invisible, to blend into the background. But today, there was something different about it. Today, being invisible meant being present. Today, being invisible meant being there for her. Around me, the conversations buzzed. The guests were talking about their businesses, their wealth, their lives so different from mine. But I didn't let it bother me. I kept moving, doing my job, serving them as if it were just another night. The champagne flowed freely, and I made sure every glass was topped off. All the while, I kept my focus on Emily, on the daughter who had no idea that her father was standing just a few feet away, invisible to the man she had chosen to marry. At one point, I found myself near the head table where Emily and Alex were seated. I could see the way Alex was looking at me now, his gaze cold, calculating, like I was a problem he hadn't quite solved yet. But I didn't care. His disdain was nothing compared to the pride I felt for my daughter. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked it quickly and saw a text message from Emily. "Dad, where are you? I miss you." I felt a wave of emotion wash over me as I read her words. She missed me. She was thinking of me, even though I was just a servant in her eyes right now. I didn't have time to respond. The moment passed too quickly, and I returned to my duties. But the message stayed with me. It was a reminder that I was not invisible to her. I would always be her father, no matter what. As the night continued, the tension began to build. The guests were beginning to get restless, eager for the next phase of the evening, the toasts, the dancing, the celebration. But for me, the most important moment was yet to come. The moment I would find a way to be there for my daughter. The evening pressed on, and the air in the room grew heavier with each passing minute. The guests, now well into their second or third glasses of wine, had shifted their focus from the food to the celebration itself. The buzz of chatter and clinking glasses mixed with the soft strains of classical music playing in the background, but I could hardly hear it anymore. I was too focused on the one thing that had been driving me all night, being there for Emily, no matter how invisible I had to become. At some point, the staff began to clear the tables and prepare for the toasts. The waiters moved with practiced efficiency, maneuvering around the guests without drawing attention. I was one of them now, no longer just a father at his daughter's wedding but another piece of the service, another hand behind the curtain of a world I didn't belong to. Then, the moment arrived. Alex stood, straightening his suit jacket, and the room fell silent. It wasn't the typical wedding speech, a light-hearted, sentimental toast celebrating love. No, Alex had something else in mind. I watched from the corner of the room, my eyes fixed on the scene unfolding before me. The crystal glasses shimmered under the chandeliers, reflecting the moment that I would never forget. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex began, his voice cutting through the room, "I want to thank you all for being here today. This wedding, this moment, is about more than just Sophia and me. It's about the future. About the connections we make. The opportunities we create. This isn't just a wedding. This is a declaration of success." The words flowed smoothly from his mouth, but something in his tone felt cold, calculated. He didn't speak of love or family. He spoke of investment, of networking, of what he stood to gain from this event. Sophia sat beside him, her smile tight, her eyes a little too wide as she nodded along to his speech. I could see it, the tension in her posture, the discomfort in her smile. She wasn't fully there, wasn't fully present in the moment, and I knew why. She was feeling the weight of his words just like I was. "And while we are here to celebrate," Alex continued, "we must also acknowledge that not everyone in the room has contributed equally. Some people are more instrumental in making this day possible than others." I felt a knot form in my stomach. There it was, the subtle warning. The power play. Alex was positioning himself, marking his territory in front of his guests, all while making sure that everyone knew where he stood in this hierarchy. "But there are those," Alex said, his gaze sweeping the room. who exist simply to serve, who exist to make life easier for those of us who are truly building something. Take James, for example. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My heart raced, and I felt my body tense involuntarily. The room, still hanging on his every word, seemed to hold its breath. Every eye in the room turned toward me. James Collins, Alex continued, his voice dripping with disdain. He's just a waiter. A man who serves others but has never amounted to anything of his own. Never built anything. Never achieved anything meaningful. A man who spends his life waiting on others, living in the shadows. The blood drained from my face as the words cut through me, each one sharper than the last. I stood frozen, holding my tray, my hands trembling slightly. I wasn't even sure I could move if I wanted to. Sophia's face went pale, her hands pressed to her mouth as she realized what was happening. I saw her lean forward, her eyes wide with horror, but it was too late. The damage had been done. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging glances, their polite smiles slipping into awkward frowns. But Alex didn't stop. He was riding the wave of power now, emboldened by the attention he was getting. I'm sure James means well, Alex continued. But the truth is, we all have our place. Some people create, and some people serve. That's the way the world works. Some people will always be important, and others will always just exist to facilitate the lives of those who matter. I stood there, in the middle of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. His words were so calculated, so intentional. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, and I knew he was waiting for me to break, to react, to show some sign of weakness. But I wasn't going to give him that. Not now. Not here. I straightened my back, holding my tray steady as I walked toward the table in front of me. I didn't look at anyone else. I didn't need to. I kept my gaze straight ahead, focusing on my steps, focusing on the task at hand. I would not let him break me. Would anyone like more champagne? I asked, my voice calm, professional, almost mechanical. I didn't let my hand shake as I poured the champagne, but I could feel the eyes of the entire room on me. I could feel them watching, waiting to see how I would react. The silence in the room was almost unbearable. Alex's gaze locked onto mine, his lips curling into a smug smile, as if he thought he had won. But I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. As I moved through the room, refilling glasses and collecting empty plates, I could feel the tension in the air. The guests murmured amongst themselves, some of them looking at me with curiosity, others with discomfort. I could feel their judgment, but I ignored it. I had no time to care about their opinions. Sophia's eyes met mine across the room, her face etched with confusion and regret. She couldn't understand why Alex had done this. She couldn't understand why he had humiliated me in front of everyone. But she would. One day, she would see the truth. And I would be here for her, no matter what. The evening carried on, but the mood in the room had changed. Alex's toast had left a heavy cloud over the celebration. The guests still ate, still drank, but the conversations were quieter now, more strained. The warmth that had once filled the room was replaced by an uncomfortable chill, as if the party had been interrupted by an unspoken truth. I moved through the crowd, refilling glasses and clearing plates, keeping my head down as I went about my duties. I could feel the weight of every eye on me as I passed, but I didn't let it get to me. I wasn't there to prove anything to anyone but Emily. And then, just as I was clearing a table near the bar, something happened that shifted everything. A young man in his 20s, sitting with a group of guests, had been glancing at the television mounted above the bar. Bella Vista had a tradition of playing classic films during special events, and tonight's feature was an old black and white war movie. It wasn't unusual for the guests to pay little attention to it, but this young man was staring intently at the screen, his eyes widening in recognition. "Oh my God!" he said loudly, causing the people at his table to look up. "That's him!" The words rippled through the room like a wave. A few guests turned to see what had caught his attention, their faces reflecting curiosity. I froze in place, my heart skipping a beat. I knew exactly what was coming. That's the same man, the young man exclaimed again, pointing at the screen, then at me. The waiter! He's on TV! The room went silent, and every head turned to follow his gaze. There I was, younger, dressed in a naval uniform, speaking passionately on screen. The film was from years ago, long before I had become just another face in the crowd, working endless shifts at Bella Vista. I felt the eyes of the room on me now, not as the invisible waiter I had been all evening, but as the man on the screen, the man who had once been someone else entirely. I remember him, an elderly woman near the window said, her voice quivering with excitement. I remember seeing him in theaters. He was so good. Such presence. Such talent. Another guest pulled out their phone, tapping quickly to search for more information. James Collins, they said, reading from their screen. 7 major films between 1988 and 1995. Golden Globe nomination for Atlantic Crossing. The revelation spread like wildfire. The guests whispered excitedly to each other, their phones out, searching for clips, remembering moments from old movies that had long been buried. I stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the room's attention making my chest tighten. Sophia's face, which had been pale with the shock of Alex's toast, was now a mixture of disbelief and awe. She looked at me with wide eyes, trying to process what was happening. The same woman who had been told just hours ago that I didn't belong at her wedding was now realizing that the man she had always known as just a waiter was someone far more significant. The contrast was sharp, and I could see the confusion, the realization dawning on her face. For a moment, everything felt surreal. I had kept this part of my life hidden for so long, even from Emily. She had never known the full extent of what I had given up. I had never wanted her to think that fame or success had ever been the goal. But now, in this moment, all of it was laid bare. I continued walking through the crowd, keeping my composure despite the storm of whispers surrounding me. The guests who had once seen me as invisible were now staring at me with a mix of awe and curiosity. The young man who had recognized me stood up, his excitement spreading through the room. That's him! James Collins, the actor! He shouted, as if I were some sort of forgotten treasure suddenly discovered again. I could feel the eyes of every person in the room on me now. But I didn't flinch. I didn't need their validation. What I had built with my own hands, what I had sacrificed for Emily, was worth more than anything they could offer. I turned to make my way to the back of the room, where Antonio was overseeing the staff. But before I could move, Sophia was there, making her way through the crowd toward me. She was pushing past the guests, her eyes locked on me. Dad! She called out, her voice trembling with emotion. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ever say anything? I stopped in my tracks, my heart swelling at the sight of her. She was still in her wedding dress, but now it felt as if the moment had shifted, as if everything had come to a halt. The guests were still whispering, but their attention was now on the two of us. They were watching, waiting, as the truth unfolded before their eyes. I took a deep breath and smiled softly, the weight of the years lifting just a little. The past doesn't define us, sweetheart. What matters is right now. What matters is that I'm here with you on your wedding day. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reached me, her hands trembling as she took mine. You gave up everything for me, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I never knew. I squeezed her hands gently, feeling the tremor in her grip. I didn't give up anything, Emily. I gained everything. A daughter who became an extraordinary woman. Watching you grow, learning, succeeding. No role could have given me that. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, pulling me into a tight embrace. Around us, the guests stood frozen, still processing the revelation. But in that moment, it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the two of us. The applause started slowly at first, but then it grew, a genuine show of respect for the man I had been. The man I had chosen to be. It wasn't for the films. It wasn't for the old accolades. It was for the choices I had made, for the love I had given. As I pulled back from Emily, I glanced toward the head table. Alex was still seated, his face pale, his eyes wide. For the first time all night, I saw something that wasn't arrogance in his eyes, something that looked like genuine shame. The man who had tried to control everything, who had tried to dismiss me, now saw me for what I was. He saw me as a father. And for the first time, I wasn't invisible anymore. The room had erupted into a quiet buzz, the guests still processing the revelation. I could feel their eyes on me, but I didn't mind. For once, it wasn't the usual polite disinterest. They weren't seeing me as just a waiter. They were seeing me as a person, a man who had lived a life full of sacrifice and love. And I wasn't about to let anyone, especially Alex, take that away from me. Sophia still stood by my side, holding my hands tightly, her eyes full of admiration and tears. It was as if the events of the evening had unfolded in a way that neither of us had anticipated, but now she saw me in a new light, something I had hoped for, but never expected to happen at her wedding. And then, just as I thought the moment was settling, Alex stood up from his seat at the head table, his face pale and his body stiff with tension. The room quieted immediately, and all eyes shifted back to him. I had a feeling I knew what was coming next. This was the moment when he would either double down on his arrogance, or realize the gravity of what he had done. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex began, his voice unsteady, but still projecting the authority that he seemed to carry with him everywhere. "Earlier tonight I said some things that I now deeply regret. Things that were inexcusable. I owe an apology to someone who has more than earned my respect." I glanced at Sophia, who looked as if she were bracing herself for what was coming. The air in the room felt thick, like we were all holding our breath, waiting for Alex to either rise above his pride or stay trapped in his own ego. "I want to apologize to James Collins," Alex continued, his voice growing more controlled, though there was a vulnerability now that hadn't been there before. "I was wrong. I misjudged him. And for that I am sorry." The room fell silent again, and I could hear the guests exchanging glances, some of them surprised, others looking relieved. Alex was finally owning up to his mistakes. But I wasn't sure it was enough yet. Could an apology like this erase the words he had spoken earlier? Could it undo the public humiliation he had put me through? "I was wrong to judge James by his career, by his past," Alex went on, his voice shaking slightly. "The truth is, he's more of a man than I ever realized. He raised a daughter who has become one of the most incredible women I know. I've been blinded by my own ambition and pride, and I allowed that to cloud my judgment. So, James, if you'll allow it, I'd like to start over. Not as the man who humiliated you, but as someone who respects you, who understands what it means to be a father." I could feel the weight of the words settle over me. It wasn't just the apology, it was the recognition. Alex had finally seen what he had failed to recognize before. And I wasn't sure what to do with it. Was it enough? Could I forgive him for the way he had treated me and my daughter? Could I accept his apology and move forward? I looked at him, my gaze steady, but not hostile. I had already made my peace with the events of the night. I had already decided that I wouldn't let his arrogance dictate how I felt about myself. And I wasn't about to let this apology be a way for him to absolve himself of his behavior. "Thank you, Alex," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "But it's not just about the apology. It's about understanding what family means. It's about putting the people you love first. That's what matters. You've got a lot to learn if you want to be the man Emily deserves." The room was still, hanging on every word. I could see the shift in Alex's eyes. His arrogance was crumbling, replaced by something more human. It was the first time I'd seen him truly vulnerable, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. "James," Alex said, his voice cracking slightly, "I promise you, I'll work harder to understand that." I nodded, not sure if I believed him, but deciding not to waste any more energy on anger. The apology was out there, and now it was up to him to prove that he meant it. Sophia stepped toward us, her eyes still glistening with tears. She moved between Alex and me, taking my hands in hers. "I don't care what's happened," she said, her voice strong now. "I'm just happy that we're all here. This moment, this day, it's about love. It's about family. And nothing else matters. Her words hung in the air like a promise, and for the first time that evening, the tension in the room seemed to lift. The guests began to clap, though the applause was more subdued than before. It wasn't just for the apology. It was for the understanding that had finally broken through the surface of the night's chaos. I turned to Sophia, my heart swelling with pride. She had always been my little girl, but tonight, I saw the woman she had become, the woman who could bring people together, who could bridge the gaps that separated us. I looked back at Alex, who was now standing beside me, his expression sober. "Thank you," I said again, my voice softer now. "I'm not doing this for you, Alex. I'm doing this for Emily. And that's all that matters." The evening wasn't over yet, and I knew there was still more to come. But in that moment, I felt the weight of the night begin to lift. I had my daughter's respect. I had her love. And that, in the end, was more than enough. As the applause settled down, the evening slowly returned to its intended purpose, a celebration of love, of family, of new beginnings. The guests, no longer distracted by the tension of earlier, resumed their conversations, their laughter, their small talk about the evening's events. But for me, the moment of revelation had passed, and now, there was only one thing left to do. Sophia turned to me with a soft smile, her eyes still shimmering with tears. "Dad," she said, her voice catching for just a second, "would you honor me with the father-daughter dance?" The question hit me like a wave. The words I had longed to hear, the moment I had dreamed about for years, had finally come. It wasn't the wedding I had imagined, but it was the one that mattered, the one where I was seen, where I wasn't invisible anymore. "I'd be honored," I replied, my voice steady despite the emotions that rushed through me. The room around us seemed to fade away as I reached out to take her hand. In that moment, there was only Sophia, only us, and everything that had led us to this point. We walked to the dance floor, the soft strains of the music filling the air. The guests cleared a path for us, and as we stood there together, the room seemed to hold its breath. I wasn't just a father walking his daughter down the aisle. I was the man who had given everything for her, who had sacrificed so much to ensure she had a future. And in this moment, I realized that she had become the woman I had always hoped she would be. Strong, graceful, capable of love and understanding. The music played, and we swayed together, our movements in sync, as if all the years had brought us to this one perfect moment. I could feel the weight of the world lifting as I held her close. She wasn't just my little girl anymore. She was a woman who had chosen love and family over everything else. I felt a presence beside me, and I glanced up to see Alex standing just off the dance floor, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. He watched us for a moment, then stepped forward, his posture stiff and uncertain. I just wanted to say something," Alex said, his voice hesitant. "I know I've made mistakes. And I just want to say thank you, James. For everything you've done for Emily. For being there. For being the father she deserves." I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't just about power or pride. There was genuine sincerity there, a realization that he couldn't take away from me what was mine, what I had earned through years of sacrifice. I nodded once, slowly, a small gesture of acknowledgement. "You're welcome, Alex. But it's not about thank yous. It's about understanding what's important. And making sure the people we love know that they matter." Alex seemed to swallow whatever words he had left unsaid, and with a quiet nod, he turned and walked away. There would be no more battles between us. No more games to play. It was over. The truth had been laid bare, and now, there was nothing left but to move forward. The music swelled, and I turned back to Sophia. Her face, glowing with happiness, was the only thing I saw. I smiled and pulled her a little closer, savoring this moment for all it was worth. I had fought for this. I had fought to be here, to be present, to be her father. And now, I would never take this moment for granted again. As we danced, I realized something important. Sometimes, the world doesn't give us the life we expect. Sometimes, we have to fight for what we believe is ours. But in the end, it's love and family that matter most. Not money. Not success. Not recognition. The night went on, but it felt like a new beginning. The guests gathered around the dance floor, clapping along, some joining us in the celebration. The clinking of glasses and laughter returned, and I could hear the soft hum of the music and the voices of the people I had come to care about. But most of all, I could hear my own heartbeat, steady and strong. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged. I wasn't invisible. I was a father. And nothing, not even money or status, could change that. As the song came to a close, I pulled away from the dance, my arms still around her, reluctant to let go. I kissed her forehead, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, Emily." And for the first time that evening, she looked at me not as a man who had been relegated to the background of her life, but as the father who had always been there. "I love you, Dad," she whispered back, her eyes sparkling with something deeper than just happiness. And that was all I needed to hear. The evening carried on, the laughter and conversations continuing, but I knew one thing for sure: I had my place in this world. Not as a waiter. Not as a background figure. But as a father, standing beside his daughter on the most important day of her life. And that was enough.